Hello, fellow modelers. Bruce here. I am back working on the layout, doing some scenery, and quite a while back now we had talked about the Bangor slate scene, and I made some slate cutter shacks. And what they were cutting were roof shingles from big slabs of slate. And if you looked at a picture, a prototype picture, you would see long stacks of roof shingles after they had cut them. And, they were kind of tipped back, a little slanted back into a big long stack of individual slates. And I wanted to model some of those. But in HO scale, each slate is so small that the idea of physically cutting a whole bunch of individual, very thin rectangles and stacking them up was a bit daunting. So I talked to my grandson, who has a 3D printer, and said, "Do you think you could 3D print some of these stacks?" And he said, "Well, I'll give it a try." And one thing you have to know in HO scale, if you really take something this, in particular, thin, and try to model it to actual scale in HO, it's very difficult. If this was O scale, it would be a heck of a lot easier. But he made some stacks up for me, and in a little while I'll bring it over under some other light and show you some of the detail that you can see. On the side, slanting back, you can see the individual lines where each slate is, and if you feel in particular, you can feel the grooves in the top that would be between each individual slate. But I know that when I paint these up, even if I use a very thin paint, the tendency is going to be to fill those grooves. And so you do something that you have to do every once in a while in the smaller scales, and that is to exaggerate a bit. In other words, even though these slates are to scale, what I'm going to do is take about every other notch that my grandson has designed in here and deepen it with a jeweler's saw, which has a very, very thin blade in it. So I can, as I go back, I can feel it, the blade, fall into these notches. So I'm going to pick like maybe the second notch in and just exaggerate that notch by cutting down with the jeweler's saw. And I'm going to go again, jump it. So I'm really, in a sense, exaggerating about every second division between the slates and deepening that gouge. And I know that once I clean these up and then paint it, in particular, I'm going to paint them obviously slate gray, and then I'll try putting a little thin alcohol and India ink wash, especially in the top of the stack, that the black will settle into these notches that I'm exaggerating as I cut in. And it should help make the individual slates pop out a little bit. At least that's my hope. And take a stiff toothbrush and kind of clean out the individual grooves that I'm making here, and turning it around, and I'm coming in from the other side, again about every other slate. Just cutting that notch down. So I'm going to try this, clean them up a little bit, and I'll go over under some better light with the camera, zoom in, and see if you can perhaps see what I'm talking about and what I've done with the jeweler's saw. If this works out, I need about 4 of these stacks, I guess, for the scene that I have. I don't have a lot of room. I think 4 will be enough to simulate what I'm trying to do here. The got a little burr on here, so I'm going to try. The burr is from the saw, not from the 3D printing. So yeah, I'll come back and show you what these look like under some better light and magnification. Talk to you again then. Well, I'm under a little bit better light here, and this is about as far as I can zoom in. And just maybe you can see the details on the side of this stack that make it look like individual slates stacked at a slant, and start to get an idea of the grooves in the top to show where the individual slates are. Again, I've exaggerated the ones on the top by deepening about every other one. And what I will do eventually is put these stacks back in here, a couple of them together, and put some other individual slates of that size leaning up against them to give the idea again of, let's get this one around the other way, stacks of slates rather than just a gray blob. But you'll get the idea. I think it'll work. We'll see. And if it does come out looking pretty good, I'll put a bit speeded up video at the end to show how my grandson uses design software to feed into his 3D printer. And as I zoom out, you'll see some of those slate cutters shacks that I have next to the slate pit. Alrighty, talk to you again soon. Okay, I'm going to try to do something of filming through a magnifying glass to see if you can see some of the details on the side. Oops. On the side of these, let's see. And the grooves on the top of it. So, if this doesn't make you dizzy looking at it, maybe you can see that you get some effect here of individual roof slates being stacked together. And that's what I have duplicated now through my grandson's 3D printing, and we'll see how that turns out. All right, more later. the final scene of my slate stacks of roof slates and slate cutter, carrying one last slate to put on the stack there before the day is over. What I did was, put a few individual slates at the front of the stacks, two on each stack, a little bit offset, to kind of show the individual slates. And I think it's okay as it is. It's not quite as what's the big thing? Not quite as realistic, I guess, as if I had put individual slates. But boy, putting 100 or so of those individual slates would have gotten, would have stressed my patience more than I cared. So, again, the overall scene is there's the office, the slate stacks, and there's the slate cutter shacks. And the pit with an outhouse, a sign that I had made in my previous layout about caution, open pit. Let me come back a little bit. See if you can see that okay. I found it by accident, actually. And then, of course, down in the pit, we have the man cage, lowering a fellow down in the pit, and then down in the pit there's a worker and a ladder, and overall scene is okay. Something for people to look at as they visit the layout. So that's it for this video, and as always, if you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you have not already done so, then please subscribe to the channel. Alrighty, talk to you again soon.